and welcome to the RevRx podcast. My name is Chad Potts, and I'm your host. Today, we're going to jump into a topic I think most of us struggle with and probably need some help, and it's the topic of posture. Today, we live in a world that's more sedentary than ever. A lot of us have desk jobs, and so we realize that poor posture plays a role in our health, but I'm not sure that we understand the degree to which our posture affects the rest of our body. Did you know that poor posture has been linked to cardiovascular problems, respiratory problems, endocrine disorders, mood disorders? And a matter of fact, if we improve our posture, if we stand more than we sit, if we begin moving our bodies the way that they should, what studies show us is that it actually reduces our overall risk of death from any cause. So posture is super, super important. And I'm so excited to bring on our guest, Dr. Scott Vatcher. Dr. Vatcher's work has been highlighted in Men's Journal magazine, as well as many other magazines and articles around the world. He's truly a leading voice when it comes to all things human movement and posture. He's a best-selling author. He really is leading his field when it comes to improving our quality of life through purposely and intentionally focusing on our posture. So tune in until the end. You're going to want to hear what Scott has to tell us today. I introduce to you my friend, Dr. Scott Vatcher. Scott, thank you for joining us from halfway across the world in Australia.
Yeah, thanks for having me. As we were talking about earlier, I can predict the future. So if you want to know anything, let me know.
That's right. It's Tuesday afternoon here in the States, and it is Wednesday morning in Australia. So if you guys want to know anything, hook up with Scott, and he'll tell you what it looks like the next day.
That's right.
So Scott, you are first and foremost a chiropractor, posture expert, all things human body movement, that sort of thing. So tell us a little bit about just kind of what interested you in that field. You know, what was it that led you down that pathway towards chiropractic medicine?
Yeah, I grew up in a small town in Eastern Canada and always knew that I wanted to help people in some way. And as I went through high school, I loved science. So I got into a biochemistry degree, and without even knowing, it was kind of the pre-med degree for my particular university in my town. That got me interested in that, and I always thought I was going to be a medical doctor. So all my undergrad degree, I studied super hard to try and get the best marks, because getting into medicine isn't the easiest thing. So
Sure.
Working really hard for that, and I always had a backup plan, because I knew as I went further along that most people who apply to medicine, they don't get in the first time.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I will apply, but if I don't get in, then I'll go back and I'll do my honors, and then I'll apply again. And then if I don't get in again, I will go and do my master's and I'll apply again. So I had this super long-term plan that this was what I was going to do. And as I applied and didn't get in the first time, which wasn't surprising. And so I was doing my honors. And during that time period, I realized very quickly that although I loved the theory of science, I did not like the practicality, because I was doing research on lab rats and surgeries, etc. And it was not really my jam. And so I had to come up with another plan. So during my honors degree, I said, okay, I will apply to medicine again, because that is the plan. But what else could I do? Where else can this go? Because what if I don't get in? I'm not going to go back and do a master's for another 2 years.
Sure.
So as I was getting ready for that, I looked into other health sciences. So I looked into physiotherapy, chiropractic, occupational therapy, and the only one that really interested me was chiropractic. Okay. So for this round, I applied to medicine and chiropractic. And interesting story on that one too. So when it came time to get my results for whether or not I got in, what happened was I got on the wait list for medical school, which is like the best and the worst thing that could possibly happen, because it's like, I'm almost in. What am I going to do?
Almost, but not quite.
That's right. And at that same time, I did get into chiropractic. So I thought, okay, I got a backup plan. Mm-hmm. And I waited and I waited and I waited, and it came to, within a couple of weeks of starting school, and nothing had changed. And so I was like, okay, I got my mind ramped up to do chiropractic. And I had to move to Toronto for that. So about a 3-hour flight from my hometown. So I got ready. I went up there. I found a place to live. I just started the first week of what was it, like an orientation week in chiropractic school. And on day number 2 at around noon, I got a call. And the call was, you are accepted to med school. And you need to let us know by 5 p.m. if you're going to take that position or not. Because if you don't take it, we have to pass it to the next person.
Sure.
I was like, I have 5 hours to decide my life. Right?
No pressure.
No pressure. Yeah. And it was interesting because if I'd taken a step outside of that and thought, okay, if this happens, there is no question. I'm going to do medicine. It's what I've wanted to do for years.
Mm-hmm.
But through life and everything else and having moved up and started the process, and I was like, man, okay, I got to really think about this. So I sat down and I wrote a list of pros and cons for both.
There you go. Uh-huh.
And interestingly, that made it extremely clear as to what I was going to do. So
Nice.
I picked up that fork in the road and decided down the road of chiropractic. And I must admit, it was probably the best decision I've ever made in my life. It really, it brought me through. It gave me the friends that I have now. It gave me the profession that I have, that I've been doing for 21 years and that I love. Brought me down the road of helping thousands of people on a different scale. Medicine is great in certain realms, but knowing what I know now, I much rather help people the way that I help people now.
You bring to the table just a unique way of treating a patient, and that's a little different than the medicine world, and it's extremely appreciated and extremely valuable. Don't you love it when your backup plan becomes your plan?
How many times
story,
in life did that really happen? Like I have a saying that, when times get stressful, when things aren't going your way, is that it'll all work out in the end.
That's right. Yeah.
The caveat to that is that it's all going to work out in the end. It may not look anything like you thought it was going to look.
That's right.
But it's all going to work out.
And usually for the best.
That's right.
I started pre-med as well before I got into the pharmacy world. And before I needed to apply and all this, I kind of worked out that, okay, I don't particularly love touching people. I don't particularly like blood and fluids. And so that got me thinking, all right, well, what can I do? Because I'd gone too far to back out, and I love science. So I'm like, what can I do inside this where I don't have to deal with those things? And so pharmacy seemed like a good standpoint.
Definitely don't be a chiropractor.
That's right. That's right. But it worked out, and it was one of those things where, man, now just like what you said, I wouldn't have it any other way. So, so while that may have been my backup plan, that ended up being perfect. So you find yourself in this world of chiropractic medicine, and you're now one of the premier speakers when it comes to all things posture. We live in a world, particularly post-COVID, to where there's more people than ever seemingly working from home, sitting in a home office, just exactly like what I'm doing right now. And that has led to some unfortunate consequences from a posture standpoint. Is that something that you're seeing, maybe starting to see some consequences of poor posture from a sitting standpoint, from sedentary lifestyles sort of thing? And how are you going about approaching that and kind of combating that, if so?
Well, the way I look at it is COVID put sitting on steroids.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. We were already in a sitting epidemic.
That's right.
I was already talking about the negative consequences of posture, particularly on the kids, more so than anyone else. The idea of the old man, old woman syndrome, the rounding and the forward head posture, and, walking with a cane or a little buggy and all those types of things. But I'm literally seeing more and more of that in the smaller kids. I'm seeing posture that you should see in a 60, 70-year-old, and even then, not a 60 or 70-year-old, ideally never, but in, your typical 60, 70-year-old in as little as 8 to 10-year-olds.
Wow.
So it is extremely scary. And COVID just put a next level onto the sitting epidemic. There's a saying that says sitting is the new smoking. Basically for every cigarette, you smoke, they somehow worked out that it'll take roughly about 20 minutes off your lifespan. But for every hour you sit, it will take about the equivalent of smoking 2 cigarettes off your lifespan.
That's incredible.
So if you sit for 10 hours a day, it's roughly the equivalent of smoking a cigarette or smoking a pack of cigarettes when it comes to lifespan and what's called all-cause mortality. So it's not a specific, well, you would know what that is, but for the listeners out there, all-cause mortality is basically die of anything.
Yeah.
So any type of disease process. So sitting will literally contribute to almost every disease process there is in the body because it shuts it down. The human body is designed to move. It's not designed to sit in any way, but unfortunately, it's super comfortable. Like if you look at third world countries or countries who haven't advanced as much, when you look at the way they go into a rest posture, it's usually in a deep squat. Mm-hmm. But interestingly, if you give them chairs, they'll sit in them.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because it's comfortable.
It's comfortable, right?
Very comfortable. Me and you are doing it right now.
That's right.
We should both be standing up as we're recording this, but we're not.
Yeah.
It's just part of the process. And I think just because it's just because it is common, we make the mistake that it's normal.
Oh yeah. Oh, I like that. Yeah, just because it's common, we make the mistake that it's normal. That's profound. And I smiled when you brought up the issue about sitting as a new smoking. I was going to bring that up to you, so you beat me to the punch.
Right.
That has really illuminated for me the importance of movement. I remember when I was in pharmacy school, one of my take home points was, okay, don't smoke because it's a risk factor for everything. You walk through all the disease processes and, okay, well, risk factors, smoking's for every one of them. And so then when I started hearing about, okay, so sitting is the new smoking, and really seeing a lot of those parallels and the increase in all-cause mortality, I'm thinking, wow, I mean, we think we're healthy today because we now know better than to fill our lungs with tar and toxins and that sort of thing. We've just swapped it out, haven't we? We're not doing that anymore, but instead we're doing something that's just as harmful for us long term. So thinking about longevity, thinking about long-term health, what are some of the most important things we can do in order to preserve our health, preserve our longevity, help us live longer, help us be healthier for longer? I think is maybe a more attainable goal. What would be your thoughts on that?
Let's break down what posture is, first of all. Most people, when you mention the word posture, basically just sort of sit up a little bit straighter.
You saw me do that a minute ago.
Yeah, and most people do. Like when I'm in a consult with a client and we mention anything to do with posture, which, by the way, I've been seeing over the years because I've been doing this for 20 years, the amount of people coming in with postural complaints is extremely increasing. Like when I first started, almost nobody would ever mention their posture. And now almost, 9 out of 10 people who come in for an initial consultation, for whatever reason, posture will be one of the issues. So basically, like I said, I call it a posture pattern. And think about it like this. It is the combination of the way your body is when you are static, and that's either sitting or standing, but also the way it is when you're moving, because the static problems don't just stay static. When you're in a dynamic movement pattern, those posture patterns sort of show their ugly face as well. And think about it like this, the combination, or how did you get the posture that you got? Because most people ask that when I review an x-ray or a posture exam results with people. Almost every time, how did I get that way? This is way worse than I thought. How did that happen? And it's a combination of what I call the good, the bad, the ugly. Okay. So your posture pattern is a combination of everything you've done up until the moment of right now. So there's the good, the bad, the ugly. The good is everything you ever did to contribute to good posture. So that's every time you did a yoga class, every time you stretched, every time you exercised, even every time you eat a healthy meal, because your building blocks if you don't have the proper building blocks, it's going to be difficult to have that better posture.
Sure.
Then we've got the big bad things that have happened: accidents, injuries, traumas, surgeries. But then there's this huge field that people forget about because it makes sense. Oh, okay, posture helps if I do yoga. And when I had that surgery on my back, that's going to affect my posture.
Right.
But it's everything you do on a day-to-day basis. So
In between.
that's right. It's like when you sit down in your car and one shoulder's higher than the other as you're, driving, when you are crossing your leg when you're sitting, when you are standing at work and you got all your weight on one hip, all these small things, the tiny things that don't in and of themselves, they're not too bad. But when you add them up, how much you do them, that's where the problem comes in. And that, I think, is the biggest sort of untapped market when it comes to improving posture. Because when it comes to posture, the most, from a physiological or anatomical viewpoint, the most important part of posture is your spine. But really, it comes from the tip of your toes right to the tip of your head.
Wow.
Every bit of your body is going to contribute to your posture. Your forward head posture is a huge indicator. It is probably the most common but most detrimental problem when it comes to what's happening with your posture. So if your forward head posture is where your ear is supposed to be over your shoulder, if it's about 5 centimeters forward, it can triple to quadruple the weight of your head.
Wow.
So if your head weighs, we have software that determines your head's going to weigh about 5 kilos based on your height and your weight. But if your head's 5 centimeters forward, that 5 kilos, your body's going to feel like it's anywhere from 15 to 20 kilos.
Just being off center. Yeah.
That's right. It's simple physics.
Yeah.
And when I describe it that way, it is simple physics. If you have a 5 kilo dumbbell and you hold it by your side, you can probably hold it there all day long. No problems.
Mm-hmm.
But if you take that 5 kilo dumbbell and put it out in front of you like this, how long do you think you can hold it there?
It gets heavy quick.
Yeah, very quick.
Yeah.
And so your body has to adapt around it.
Sure.
And posture is, remember, accumulative. Mm-hmm. So as it builds up, it happens so slowly that we don't even know it's happening until a problem happens. And then we think once the symptom is there, that's when it started. And that's probably the biggest, I talk about it in my book, it's probably the biggest number one misconception that we have about how our bodies perform is that if it doesn't hurt, it's healthy.
Yeah.
And if it does hurt, it's unhealthy.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then if it does hurt, then I just now did that.
That's right.
And what you're saying is it's those cumulative small, we'll call it bad movements for lack of a better term, that have kind of led to that over the accumulation of time. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that when we think about combating poor posture, it's not all that easy because you've developed yourself into this pattern or habit or what have you over time, and so it's not going to be as easy, or at least from my standpoint, outside looking in, it seems like, okay, if you're saying it took me years to get to this point, there's probably not going to be a switch that we can flip and say, okay, now you're all better. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I always tell people health is not an event; it's a process.
Yeah.
People think about, again, when people see me in a practical point of view from in practice, a very common question is, can you fix it?
Yeah.
And I always take a step back and I go, okay, well, what does that mean to you?
Yeah.
Because fix is something you do to a toaster or a dog. It's not something that you can do when it comes to human health and behavior, right?
I'm still laughing about that. That's pretty good. And you're so right, because, and particularly in our society and the culture we live in today, we want easy buttons. We want a shortcut. We want a pathway that's going to immediately turn things around. And so learning that the process is going to take time, learning that the process is where the healing takes place, I think is key to really honing in on and seeing true change, seeing true fixing, if you want to call it that, for lack of a better term. And so, yeah, so as far as from a health and longevity perspective, is fixing posture. So say you realize that you have poor posture, you realize that you're having the head issues or some sort of pain somewhere. You've identified that as coming from a posture related pattern. What would be kind of the standpoint from there? Are there some exercises we can do at home, or what's your perspective on kind of combating that from a not necessarily a preventative point of view, but from a treatment point of view?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point to make, because back to the idea of your health is a process, not an event, and anything to do with health is a continual process, right? Like, you can't eat one healthy meal and you're done. You can't exercise once. It's not a one and done process, unfortunately. Anyone who's ever tried to lose. Yeah, that's right. I mean, if I had any way to do that in a one and done, I would be an extremely rich man.
That's right.
Because yeah, we do, like, back to what you said about the idea of we want the quick fix, and we're in a goldfish phenomenon right now where we only have an attention span of 30 to 60 seconds, and the YouTube shorts and the whatever that show this next fandangle exercise, it's going to fix this and fix that, and it's really not the way it works, but unfortunately we do fall for it. So when it comes back to the idea of the process, is that simple things that you need to do on a daily basis. The way you want to think about, for example, posture, if we're looking at it from strictly that point of view, is you want to look at posture in the same realm of your dental health. Just say you had a dentist appointment coming up and you decide, okay, my teeth are not as clean as they should be. So you brush your teeth 50 times in a day. You floss 10 times that day. Your teeth have never been cleaner. You go to the dentist and he goes, wow, your teeth are clean. Good job. What do you have to do tomorrow when it comes to your teeth, right? You've got to brush them again. You've got to floss them again. It is just part of that process. Yeah. So when it comes to your posture, you want to think about it in the same way. Some simple things that you can do on a daily basis. Now, what it really comes back to is an awareness, right? Because the dentists have done a great job when it comes to having us aware of our teeth and aware of what we should do. Funny enough, I use an example like that in practice all the time. And I ask, so when was the last time you brushed your teeth? And everybody who's ever been a client of mine has said, today, except for one guy. It was a number of years ago. And, I used that example and I said, you brush your teeth twice a day, right? Or at least he's like, oh, I don't brush my teeth. It's like, oh.
There's always that one guy.
I don't even know where to go with you. If you don't even brush your teeth, your posture is a problem. So back to that idea, right? You have to think about posture like you do your teeth. Again, dentists have done a great job. So we need to start being aware of doing things properly. So awareness is, again, you can, in my book, there's all kinds of routines that I do for people who sit all day, people who stand all day. If you're sitting in the car, all kinds of different things that you can be doing, but it really comes back to awareness, because there's a study done that showed the effects of sitting all day at work. And it looked at the effects from people who did nothing at the gym, right, would sit all day at work, and then they would not do any exercise outside of work. But then also the people who do have a desk job, but they're very fit and they still train, from a regular standpoint, it could be 3, 4, 5, 6 times a week. And unfortunately, that exercise is great for your fitness, but it did not delete the negative effects of sitting all day. So you need to be aware of your sitting posture patterns in particular on a regular basis. And I'll give you the easiest thing that you can do is, well, simple but not easy, I'll call it, because it takes a little bit of diligence. And so how you can almost combat the effects is every 20 minutes, stand up for 1 minute. Simple as that. So if your listeners take one thing away, if you're sitting at a desk, And think about it. So the Australian Chiropractic Association did a study on how long people sit. And so it blew my mind. I was, even myself, was flabbergasted about the results. So the average Australian sits 12 to 14 hours a day.
Wow.
And you think, okay, if I'm sleeping 8 hours a day, then most of my life is sitting.
Yeah.
So you need to start combating those effects, because unfortunately, and I think it's different for the kids of today because their posture's so bad so early, but for people like me and you, postural effects, although they may show up, earlier, when they really show up is the cumulative effects of when we get older. So, we get into the age of, okay, well, I'm thinking about retiring and I want to, I want 20, 30 years of good life left in me, but you can barely walk by the time you retire because of the cumulative effects. And the younger you get it, the easier it is and the better the results are going to be.
Yeah. I love that. So for every 20 minutes of sitting, stand for a minute. And that's doable.
As simple as
that's
that.
extremely doable. Yeah.
I mean, that's right. It is a simple process, but not easy. When you're involved and you're in that computer and you're doing your thing, and 3 hours later, the only reason you stop is like, sore. Okay, maybe I'll go get some water or go take a pee or whatever the case is. Take some diligence, right? Sure. So make sure you have a timer, and everyone's got a phone with a timer these days.
Yep.
And just set it and put it on repeat. Every minute, just stand up. You can do a little stretch, you can do a little thing, but really it's decompressing the spine by literally standing up for 1 minute every 20.
Gotcha. So there are standing desks that have been created. What's your view on those? Are they any better for us from the standpoint of posture, or are we still kind of? I guess it depends on how we use them, right?
That's exactly right. That was going to be my first question to you. You've got one.
Yeah.
Do you use it?
Right. Not a lot.
Yeah. And it's, again, when I see clients, often the answer is semi-truthful. Oh, are you doing your exercises? And the answer is usually, well, not as much as I should. And that's such an open-ended answer. It's like, so what does that mean? You should do them every day, but you're doing them 6 days a week, or you're not doing them at all, because it's, the same answer. So that's my qualm with sit-stand desks is, honestly, 9 people out of 10 who have one don't use them. So again, here, just a little, I don't like the word hack, but a little way to use sit-stand desks is, it's not about standing all day either, right? It's about breaking up the habit of sitting. So think about this. There was a study done where they looked at 2 sets of people. One set sat for 7 hours straight, so typical work day, and the other set sit for 7 hours with this was a 2-minute break every 20 minutes.
Okay.
And the difference is, so basically it took 7 hours, 42 minutes to have the 7 hours of sitting. So it took 42 longer minutes throughout the day. The difference within the 2 groups was phenomenal in insulin sensitivity and metabolism.
Wow.
So people don't think about sitting and insulin sensitivity, do they?
Yeah, those are not things you think are immediately associated with, how I sit, how I stand. But I mean, the data's out there. It's very conclusive. So.
Very conclusive that, like we said earlier, sitting contributes to almost every bad disease out there. I call them the big 4, the big 5 here: diabetes, stroke, heart disease, cancer, neurodegeneration, the big 5.
Yeah. Right.
Sitting has a very negative effect on all 5, and therefore the reason why all-cause mortality is so much higher in people who sit more, right? So it's scary, but it's scary how easily you can change things too. So back to the sit-stand desk. Think about it like this. You don't need to stand all day. You just need to break that pattern of sitting. So set a timer for every hour. Stand for an hour, sit for an hour, stand for an hour, sit for an hour. Right? So you don't need to be standing all day. You don't, because that has its own posture pattern problems if you stand all day, because you're going to be on one hip, one shoulder's going to drop, those types of things. Yeah. It's better than sitting. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But people won't do it. And 9 out of 10 people don't use their sit-stand desk.
Yeah.
So you could break the pattern. I said an hour. You could go 20 up, 20 down, half hour up,
Mhm.
half hour down, but just a little bit longer, but up and down.
The magic seems to be in the fluctuation.
100%.
Yeah. Breaking that pattern, making sure that you're interrupting yourself every now and then to decompress, and then you can get back to it. But I think that's really profound. That's something I think most of us can just immediately begin implementing, and it is simple, not necessarily easy,
That's right.
but
Mhm.
hey, part of it's awareness, and I love that part too.
And so get this. This is a crazy stat. So
Mhm.
if you stand for an extra hour a day, so again, if you've got that sit stand desk and you can get an extra hour in, and you do it every single day, it will burn the same amount of calories as running 6 marathons a year.
Wow. And so, see, a lot of us are like, no, marathon's not going to happen for me,
Exactly. Just
but the
stand
same
an
health
hour a day,
benefits.
and
Yeah,
over a year, it's
yeah,
absolutely insane the amount of
that's crazy.
higher calories you burn just from standing. Because again,
Sure.
when it comes back to your brain, the biggest thing your brain does by far, and you think, oh, what does the brain do? It controls everything, right? The
Uh,
biggest thing, the by far the most amount of energy your brain uses is for standing, posture.
wow. Wow.
Basically, we are on 2 feet. There are very few animals that are on 2 feet. Most are on four. And the amount of work it takes to stay balanced when you're on 4 feet is significantly less than two. So just
Interesting.
standing up is so good for your brain.
Wow. You want to get your brain some exercise, try standing.
That's right. I always say exercise is more for your brain than it is for your body.
I love that. Yeah. So, along those lines, you and I talked a little bit before the show. You believe that posture kind of gives us a clue and tells us how the body's performing. There's some neuroscience there. Can you walk us through that just a little bit and your take on how does posture tell us a little bit about our performance?
So when it comes to that, yes, there's a book called The Body Keeps Score. I can't remember
Okay.
the author, but
Yeah.
it's been around for a long time, and a lot of people in the sort of body work field know about this book, and so I've sort of taken it not a step further by any means, a step sideways to show the posture keeps the score. So
Okay.
by looking at somebody and knowing what you're looking at, if I'm sitting down having a coffee at a cafe somewhere, I'm like, oh, look at that posture, look at that posture, right? It's just I see it,
Yeah.
whereas most
Yeah.
people don't quite look at it like that.
Hmm.
I guess I'm a posture geek when it comes to that kind of stuff, but it does. Like I can probably decently accurately predict certain things based on just looking at your outside posture, because
That's cool.
it's a window into how your spine and your system is doing. So we
Mhm.
just talked a little bit about how movement or exercise is more for your brain than it is your body. There
Mhm.
was a researcher a few decades ago now called Roger Sperry, and he got the Nobel Prize for his research in science around the spine.
Oh wow.
Basically, what he found was movement of the spine feeds your brain. It's like a windmill. You know how a
Okay.
wind will move the turbine and then create energy? So the
Uh-huh.
movement of your spine creates the energy for your brain to work properly. And so
Interesting.
if your spine is one of two things, if it's out of alignment or it's not moving properly, and often they go hand in hand,
Right.
then you are literally not nourishing your brain the way that it should. And your brain weighs only 2% of your body weight, but uses 20% of the energy of your whole body. So it is a big energy user. And if it's not doing its job properly, again, when it comes back to posture, there's going to be massive consequences to that.
Does that have to do with kind of the release of some toxins from from the spinal fluid and that sort of thing? I've been reading up a little bit on some of that, and that sounds familiar. It's kind of like it aids in the process, and there's byproducts of that energy that need to be rid of. And is that along the same? The nerd in me wants to know: is that along the same lines?
If you think about cerebral spinal fluid, basically, which is the fluid that surrounds the brain and the spinal cord, it doesn't have a pump system like a heart and
Right.
blood system, right? So
Right.
it relies on movement to push that
Yes.
around. So you're right in that case. There are a lot of metabolites and waste products, and movement of the spine is one of the ways to push that through. It doesn't
Yeah.
have quite the system that the blood system has. So movement's important in that. And that's why movement is so important for your immunity as well, because through
Yeah.
the lymph system, but also through the brain. Most people don't realize the similarities or the interconnection of your nerve system and your immune system. And it's actually one of the things I see as a significant impact from being under chiropractic care. And particularly, I'm a pediatric chiropractor as well, so I see a lot of babies and kids.
Gotcha.
Two things: sleep and immune system.
Hmm.
So again, it's kind of these things that you don't think about. It's like my posture, my immune system, like they
Yeah.
don't have anything to do with each other, but they
Oh,
dramatically do. So
but they do.
moving your body is, in my opinion, the most important thing you can do for your health.
That's incredible. And how enlightening has this been? We've looked at movement from a lot of different perspectives. We've looked at what can go wrong when we don't move enough, or when we are sitting and have the posture patterns. We looked at the fact that it really plays into just overall health, overall rate of all-cause mortality, so death from any cause. We've looked at how it relates to your immune system, and wow, I mean, just it's amazing to me how the human body is put together with so many interconnected parts. And really, what I take from this is our bodies were made to move.
Mm-hmm.
When we stop moving, and when we become sedentary, and when we sit in these chairs because they're comfortable, when things like that become common, we call them normal, in your words, then there are consequences. And we're starting to see a lot of that all over our world today. And so, Scott, I love the work you're doing. I love the fact that you're bringing awareness to these things. I love the value that you're giving our listeners today. I think this is one we're going to earmark and say, hey, we're going to listen to this one over and over again because there's so much value here. And Scott, for those of my listeners that want to delve into your world a little bit, you'd mentioned it, that you had a sort of a quiz that you would be able to put in the show notes. And then how can they find you on social media, and how can they enter into your world and just get a little bit more of this that you've given us so much insightful knowledge on, if they want to take that a little bit deeper?
Sure. Something you said reminded me again of another phrase that I use in practice. So I'll end with that before I give you some info. First, you don't stop moving because you grow old. You grow old because you stop moving.
Wow.
And I've seen it time and time again. So if there's one sort of overlying message, that's the one.
I love it.
Yeah, so people can, you're going to put the link in the show notes. There's a quick posture quiz I have. It's called How Bad Is Your Posture? So I think it's 10 or 15 questions, probably takes all of 1 or 2 minutes to do. And then it'll spit out some results and give you some ideas about what you can do to improve if your posture's not great, which I'll be honest, statistically it's probably not, because in today's world there are very few of us that are doing
Right.
as well as we can when it comes to the posture world.
Sure.
Now, when it comes to my book, you can check out my book on Amazon, Move It or Lose It. But yeah, the best way to get on to me is just do the quiz, just to have a sense of where your posture is. And some of the questions might surprise you. And what does that have to do with posture? If again, during this conversation, you were surprised about something and how all encompassing posture can be, then just take that quiz. Besides that, you can find me on socials. I'll send a few links over that can be in the show notes to contact me if you have any questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Scott, for joining us. What a privilege it is to get to know you and just have a conversation. But thanks so much. Keep being great, and look forward to having you again on the show soon.
Again, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for what you're doing. I think your combined, like my combined expertise is super interesting, but so is yours. So, good on you for getting this message out there. Check out his other podcast because, based on what we've had a chat about, it's going to be a very awesome podcast. So keep listening. And I hope to connect with you guys out there if you have anything that you think I could be of value of.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Scott. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the RevRx podcast. We hope you enjoyed what you heard today, and if so, we'd love it if you would hit that subscribe button so that you'll never miss a new episode from us. Also, feel free to leave us reviews and comments, as we'd love to hear from you. Be blessed and be the very best you.